James Isle had learned 3 important things during her first week at the Galactic Academy. Never sit in a Metharian's breathing zone. Always check if the food dispenser was set to carbon-based life forms, and absolutely never, under any circumstances, approach a Karvesh. The Karvesh were apex predators from a death world called Karvox Prime, where gravity crushed bones and the atmosphere could strip paint from steel. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with obsidian-black exoskeletons, razor-sharp mandibles, and 6 eyes that could track movement in complete darkness. Their reputation preceded them across every civilized system in the galaxy. They were hunters, warriors, the kind of species that made even the warlike Krellians nervous. So naturally, James did exactly what she wasn't supposed to do. It happened in the Academy's central courtyard during the lunch period. James sat alone on a crystalline bench unwrapping her sandwich. Real earth bread with synthesized turkey, a luxury she'd saved credits for weeks to afford. The courtyard buzzed with hundreds of species, all carefully maintaining their territorial bubbles. Humans were still new to the galactic stage, and James had grown accustomed to the stares, the whispers, the way other students gave her a wide berth. That's when she noticed the small Karvesh. It couldn't have been more than a juvenile, perhaps equivalent to a human 10-year-old. Its exoskeleton hadn't yet developed the metallic sheen of adulthood, and it moved with an awkward, uncertain gait. The young Karvesh sat isolated beneath a twisted xenobotanical tree, its 6 eyes fixed on the ground. Even among its own kind, it appeared alone. James watched as other students passed by, some pointing, others deliberately avoiding eye contact. She recognized that posture. She'd worn it herself for most of her teenage years back on Earth without overthinking it. Her mother always said that was both her greatest strength and her most dangerous flaw. James stood and walked toward the Karvesh juvenile. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A Velen diplomat actually dropped its data pad. "Hey," James said softly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Mind if I sit here?" The young Karvesh's head snapped up, all 6 eyes widening in what James hoped was surprise rather than aggression. It made a series of clicking sounds which her universal translator struggled to process before finally rendering. "You? Speak to me?" "Yeah, I'm James Isle." She gestured to the space beside it. "You looked like you could use some company." The juvenile's mandibles twitched in what the translator interpreted as confusion. "I am Kreshik. Humans do not approach Karvesh. It is known." "Well, I'm not great at following rules." James sat down, leaving a comfortable gap between them. She pulled out her sandwich and noticed Kreshik's eyes tracking the movement. "You hungry?" "I cannot accept. Karvesh do not share feeding time. It shows weakness." James broke her sandwich in half anyway. "On Earth, we believe sharing food builds strength. It means you trust someone enough to be vulnerable with them." She held out one half. "Besides, I'm pretty sure this bread would survive a nuclear blast." "You'd be doing me a favor." Kreshik stared at the offered food for a long moment. James could almost see the internal war playing out behind those alien eyes. Finally, one clawed hand reached out and delicately took the sandwich half. They ate in companionable silence. James learned that Kreshik was the smallest of his brood, considered weak by Karvesh standards. He'd been sent to the academy to either prove himself or bring honor to his pack through scholarly achievement. A backup plan for those who couldn't excel in traditional warrior roles. "Sounds like a lot of pressure," James said, wiping crumbs from her uniform. "It is the way of my people." Kreshik's voice carried a weight that seemed too heavy for someone so young. "Maybe," James replied, "but that doesn't mean you have to carry it alone." When the lunch period ended, they parted ways. James thought little of the interaction beyond hoping she'd made one person's day slightly better. That was enough. The next morning, James arrived at her quantum mechanics lecture to find her usual seat occupied. Not by a student, but by 7 fully grown Karvesh warriors. They stood in formation around her chair, their massive forms creating an impenetrable wall of chitin and muscle. Every student in the lecture hall had pressed themselves against the far walls. Professor Zenthar, a usually unflappable Centaurian, had actually climbed onto his own desk. James froze in the doorway. Her mind raced through every worst-case scenario. Had she somehow insulted Kreshik? Violated some sacred Karvesh custom? Were they here to challenge her to combat? The largest warrior stepped forward. His exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, and his eyes held the cold calculation of someone who'd survived death world odds for decades. When he spoke, his voice resonated like grinding stone. "You're James Eiley, human. You shared sustenance with Kreshik of the Blood Valley Pack." Yes?" James's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Kreshik is the youngest of my brood. The weakest." The warrior's mandibles clicked in a pattern the translator rendered as complex emotion. Yesterday he consumed food. Today he spoke during morning gathering. He told us of the human who saw past his weakness and offered strength through shared vulnerability. The warrior placed one massive claw over his chest in what James instinctively understood as a salute. "The Blood Valley Pack does not forget debts of honor. We do not forget kindness shown to our own. Until you leave this academy, no harm will come to you. Your seat is sacred ground. Your path is protected. This is our oath." James stood speechless as the warriors parted, revealing her chair. As she walked forward on shaking legs, she saw Kreshik standing at the back of the formation. The young Karvesh's eyes met hers, and his mandibles curved in what she'd learned was a smile. She sat down, and the 7 warriors took positions around the lecture hall, casual but alert. Professor Zenthar slowly descended from his desk. "Well," he said, adjusting his robes with as much dignity as he could muster, "shall we discuss the intricacies of quantum entanglement?" As the lecture began, James caught whispers from other students. The human who befriended a predator. The girl who earned a pack's protection. The story would spread, she knew, changing and growing with each retelling. But James wasn't thinking about reputation or legend. She was thinking about a lonely kid under a tree, and how sometimes the most revolutionary act in the universe was simply choosing to be kind. Her mother had been right. Not overthinking things was definitely her most dangerous flaw. It might also be her greatest strength.